I've lived alone here for over 20 years, and art has become an important way of enriching my life of prayer. Now I'm going on a journey to see for the first time some of the greatest works of art in Britain. I hope to share the experience with you when I see them face to face. I've come to Wilton House near Salisbury. The very beauty of the surroundings suggests Arcadia, an earthly paradise. In fact, Sir Philip Sidney wrote his book Arcadia here. Shakespeare knew the house too, and there were first nights of some of his plays here. But what brings me to Wilton on my Odyssey is its art. Great history paintings, great stories, art in all its variety and beauty, and especially the beauty of portraits, the human face. Now, it's not a happenstance that Wilton has some of the greatest Van Dycks that exist. It's because the 4th Earl of Pembroke was a great friend and patron and commissioned his work freely. This great room, a double cube, 30 by 30 by 60, was built specially by Inigo Jones for this spectacular painting, the largest that Van Dyck ever painted. It's a wedding picture which celebrates a unique moment in the family history. The centre is the bride, Mary Villiers. She was the only daughter of the Duke of Buckingham, who was Charles I's best friend. So this is the family triumphing over all the other great families of Britain. They're the one who got the great prize of Mary Villiers. She was 13, and the heir, Charles, behind her, to whom she was married, was 16. And if you say, well, we really wouldn't know that from the faces, I must admit you could never tell very much anyhow from Van Dyck's faces. He was a great flatterer. I suppose they looked a little bit like that, but by and large, he was a society painter, and he did it superbly. Everyone loved being painted by Van Dyck. They'd be in silks and satins, and they'd look their very best. One can spend a lot of time looking at this picture, wondering what were they really like. Were they happy? Did they love one another? How much of this is the glitter of flattery, the glamour? How much is the truth? What is the truth? That's what we'll never know. Van Dyck's great interest, his great skill, was in depicting what a person looked like, his outer self, while Rembrandt's was in depicting what a person truly was, his inner self. Do you see it? Well then, ha-ha, because this is not a Rembrandt. It's called a Rembrandt still, but scholars now agree this was painted by Rembrandt's friend, Levens, and they shared a model who was possibly Rembrandt's mother. Now, this is fascinating, you see, because when you think it's a Rembrandt, you see Rembrandt, and you see that inner self and the wonder of the way she's caught up in reading the book. But when you change the label and call it Levens, then you don't see that at all. You see a rather charming but almost comic old lady with her glasses put on the end of her nose, and your whole attitude towards the picture can change. Now, this is very dangerous. It's wrong. We all do it. We see the label and we respond appropriately. We don't need labels on this. We don't have to know who it is. If you just look at the image, it's a great, beautiful picture. We ought to look at it and enjoy it and be heartwarmed by it, and we ought not to worry about labels. I have a humiliating confession to make. When I was told that there was at Wilton House a work by the great Spanish painter Ribera, and that it was about an ancient Athenian philosopher called Democritus, I was very excited. And I came bounding in, and I looked at the picture, and I wasn't very impressed. And I bounded on to the house after more glamorous pictures. And as I moved around, I began to have a kind of haunting feeling that I'd been put to a test, a sort of moral test, and I'd failed. And I came back and looked again. And I was overwhelmed, because this is an overwhelming picture. But it's a picture of enormous integrity, and it has nothing to seduce the frivolous, mea culpa, because I didn't see the great strength and the purity, the lack of self-dramatization, both by the artist and of the subject. Democritus was famous for being the laughing philosopher, which doesn't mean that he was one of these cheerful people who pooh-poohed all life's difficulties. It means he was one of those strong people who could see life in proportion, who got things in perspective. They say he smiled at the follies of mankind. Yes, but not cynically, because he was mankind too. He felt we were all foolish. And this is a wonderful picture of a strong, brave man. He's very poor. Look at the holes. Look at his poor clothing. His garments are kind of fumbled together. His great treasure is his book. He's a scholar. And he looks out with that frank, free sweetness of a man who doesn't have to fear what other people think of him or what the world can do to him. And it takes, I think, a certain integrity to see that. And it took me some time, I confess, really to see what was happening here. Wilton House is famous for its majestic Palladian rooms. And yet this small corner room, it's like a great casket with treasures all around. I don't like the word stunning, because who wants a blow on the head? But this picture does give a blow to the emotions when you see it. Think of how they queue up in the Louvre to look at Mona Lisa. And here is not, I admit, a Leonardo, but a work by Leonardo's pupil, da Sesto. The swan, of course, is Jove. He was always falling in love with women and nymphs, and mostly they virtuously repulsed him. Jove, however, disguised himself in various forms, and his success with Leda was because he disguised himself as a swan. Leda's swan loves her, and she's so happy and relaxed in the embrace. Look how the beak is stretched up lovingly to kind of give a kind of little love bite to the ear. And yet a sadness too, you see, that Mona Lisa smile, that downward look. If your lover is a swan, you can't have very much communication. So it's a doomed love, but we're seeing it in a moment of happiness when she's just given birth. I mean, looking at that beautiful, enclosed, firm body of Leda, it's almost sort of blasphemous to think of the eggs bursting out of it. The eggs are a poetic fancy. But it's not a sad picture. It's a moment of joy, actually. It's a picture about love and about sadness and about fertility and about a world that never was, and yet that we feel somehow mystically in touch with.